Sean Sheehan here for Severe MMA with Cage Warriors boss Graham Boylan before the big Cork card here in 11 days' time. Graham, obviously as a Cork man yourself, how proud are you to be bringing MMA back to Cork and high-level MMA into Cork again?
It's going to be a fun show for us. I think there's about 100 tickets left for sale, so it's going to be a sellout show. So it's a nice success to go back on our probably 4 to 5 event tour of the country we're going to do in the next 12 months to have the first one on a sellout. So it's a good start.
So I remember it was probably 5 or 6 years ago now, speaking to you, and we asked about where would you go in the country, maybe Galway, Limerick and all the other places. Is that kind of what you're getting at? You'll be going to different places in the country, not just kind of Cork and Dublin?
Yeah, we'll probably do Belfast early next year. We'll do that probably the first quarter of the year. We'll probably go back to Cork after Belfast to build on what we've just did, and maybe back to Belfast, and then we might finish off in Dublin.
The venue in Cork, obviously, Cage Legacy have put on a few cards there over the last while, and it's a venue that's been used for MMA, obviously, but Cage Warriors yourself with the whole McGregor Duffy card and everything like that. Was there any kind of issues going into that venue? It's not the sort of venue Cage Warriors have been in really over the last while.
No, it was a pretty straightforward event for us to do, and I was saying to somebody earlier, we do 12 to 15 shows a year, so it's nice to have a show where there's not so much resource drainage on the team to put an event on. It takes a lot to put an event on, and with my connections and contacts in Cork, to put an event on there is pretty straightforward, so we kind of slipped it in this year it's not going to be a massive drain on the team with the other events we have on. Like, we've done a show every 2 weeks since the BT Sport, I think it's BT Sport. We did Wales, Birmingham, then we got Ireland, and we finished in London. So Cork was just an easy choice.
The talk over the last few years with Irish MMA kind of dying away in a certain extent, and not many cards coming back, has been the expense and the issues putting on a card. What has changed over the last while that you can maybe not afford to bring a card back to Ireland, but that you are bringing cards back to Ireland?
What's changed for me is that there's a little undercurrent in the country right now where I believe with the right ingredients, Cage Warriors and the pros that are starting to get into their career, the debut guys, the 3-4-0 guys, and the amateurs who are about to turn pro, we've kept a close eye on the scene here, and yeah, it has been dead. There's been no shows for them to fight on, but considering that a number of them have developed through the gyms up and down the country, they've managed to get fights here and there, so we believe it's the right time to step in and develop those guys.
With the actual event itself though, what's the difference? Can you describe to us with putting on an event in Ireland maybe before the death of Joe Carvalho and putting on an event now? What are the extra steps? What are the extra costs that you have to do to put on an event right now?
Right now, I believe the medicals are the same as pre that situation. So the medicals haven't changed. To put the show on in Neptune Stadium, aside from what we did at the 3 Arena 2 years ago, no different. No, they're the same.
I was at the Bellator Media Day a while back, and I asked Dave Green, who's the biggest competition for Bellator in the UK and Ireland, and he said they don't have competition in the UK and Ireland. What are your thoughts on someone from Bellator saying something like that?
It's the same thing I'd say. We have no competition either. They're two different. If you are egging at do I think Bellator a competition to Cage Warriors? Absolutely not. And
why not?
I've had this question today a couple of times. There are two types of fighter. There's a prize fighter, and there's a fighter who wants to be the best in the world. A prize fighter has no interest in being the best in the world. A prize fighter wants to make money. Okay, that's it.
What about Conor McGregor?
Yeah, Conor McGregor is a prize fighter now. And I don't think Conor's wish to be the best in the world is there anymore. Okay, so the guys who want to make money and they're not really bothered about whether they pick up a loss or not, or whether they're getting developed, or their end goal is the UFC, then Bellator is for them. The guys that want to get to the UFC and believe they're going to be the best in the world and be the best champion in the best organization in the world, then the path they go is Cage Warriors. they're two different, it's apples and oranges. They're not comparable, you know, because name me one guy who is on track to being a great fighter that's in Bellator or signs with Bellator or wants to sign with Bellator at 3, 4, 5-0, you know.
Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think people are just going for the money early just because, you know, they want to earn big money straight away? You know, the careers are short as well, and you know, you can understand people going for the money. But do you think, like, for a long time we thought the dream was to get to the UFC? It always has been. But do you think that's kind of changing differently for some people, like that they can have a good career now in Bellator and maybe go and be a Bellator champion and get loads of money there, and maybe even more money than go through the Cage Warriors and UFC route?
You're never going to be the best in the world, are you? If you're a true fighter that wants to be the best in the world, then that answers your own question right there.
On the last broadcast, you talked about developing guys and giving them the fights where they need to get the fights and not rushing them too much. Like when you look at a guy, say like Ian Gary coming through, how do you know who to fight next, where to get him? I know yourself and Ian Dean are absolutely brilliant and you've done it for years and years, but like, let's look at a guy like John Jones, and obviously he's a very, very different animal, but someone like him came through and he destroyed everyone immediately. Like, how do you treat guys differently to see, you know, this guy might need 10 fights to develop, this guy might need 3 fights to develop, this guy might need 15 fights to develop? Is that something you look at everyone individually?
I think it's experience. It's experience in what we do. We've been doing this for nearly 10, 12 years now. And between the conversations between Ian and I, when we matchmake these fights, there's a lot of talk goes into what we think of their skill sets, what we think they need to be tested on next. You know, you may put a 2-0, 3-0 guy who's three fights in, 3 KOs. Well, let's test his grappling. Let's test his wrestling now. Let's see what he's got. So it's kind of each person is individual. And remember, if they're a Cage Warriors rostered fighter, we're looking to develop them. If they're not, then we're just bringing people in to fight the guys who are not, the guys who are rostered. So there's a lot of moving parts in putting a fight on. It's not a case of this guy's 1-0, this guy's 2-0. Let's put them together and see what happens. You know, there's a lot of moving parts. And it takes a lot of time to get one fight on. And then on top of that, a lot of people don't want to fight each other. So trying to get that to happen as well is a lot of takes a lot of time.
I think, you know, the Cage Warriors always talk about it, and I think it's actually brilliant. I think it's a great way to do it, to send people to the UFC. You know, it's that the gateway to get to the UFC. But you as someone who, you know, you send them off and you maybe don't see them again, you know, they might come back and watch your card and stuff. Are you ever like, damn it, I'm losing all these great fighters all the time? Do you ever, is that anything you ever think about?
Look, in an ideal world, yeah, we'd love to keep them all because then we'd have a little UFC, right? But we've got to understand and accept that when we take these guys in to develop them, you got to be honest with yourself and you got to be totally crystal clear and know right from the get-go, this kid wants the UFC. So you take him in, you develop him, you get him to that point where he gets a belt, he becomes a champion, he may have to defend it once or twice, he goes to the UFC. That's the trade-off. You know, the trade-off is we develop you, you fight on the show, you go to the show, you say where you came from, we develop more. And the train goes on, you know. And as long as you're honest with yourself and you know deep down that every person you bring into your organization wants the UFC, I don't see an issue with it, you know.
Two more questions. Thanks very much for your time. A while back, if you told someone you were putting on a Cage Warriors or a UFC or a Bellator card, and I believe there's no SBG Ireland fighters on the card. There's a couple of guys from down in Cork and things. What's the reason why there's no SBG Ireland guys on this card?
There is SBG Ireland guys on the card.
Who are the guys on the card?
I think there's 3 or 4 amateur SBG Cork guys on the card, yeah.
Well, no, but say from HQ here in Dublin.
There's no relationship there with them. It's that simple.
Well, what has happened? There was a bit of beef between yourself and John Kavanagh on Twitter.
No relationship there with them whatsoever. That's it.
Can that be resolved?
It's hard to resolve something when you don't know what it is. So there's no relationship there.
Okay, fair enough. And last question, Paul Hughes would probably give out to me if I didn't ask you. Is he going to be on this card? Joe McColgan, I was looking on Tapology in different places. He was announced for the card, but he doesn't seem to have an opponent. There hasn't been anything.
His opponent's not going to get medically cleared. So he had an opponent for the past 3 weeks, but we just can keep in quiet who that opponent is because we have to get them medically clear before we release the fight. So we'll have a new name for Joe in the next 24, 48 hours. Paul Hughes was offered a spot in the card, but he chose to fight in Northern Ireland on a show, I believe, last week. So there is no room for him. You know, he was given the opportunity. The spot's there for you. You be on the main card. You want to fight. And they specifically said, no, we're fighting in Northern Ireland on a show the week before, and there is no more spots in the card. I can't open the doors another hour earlier with 7-8 days notice and then find an opponent for him. It's just not going to work. It's not going to happen.
How many cards or how many fights are you actually on the card? I was looking at
There's 15 fights on the card, yeah.
Is there any ones that haven't been mentioned? How many of those are amateurs? How many are pros?
I believe there's 6, maybe 7 amateurs, and then the rest are pro. So there's still 2 fights, maybe 3 fights that need to go out publicly that have only got matched in the past 24 hours.
Thanks very much, Graham. Really appreciate the time. Looking forward to the event next week.